just to loop back the session 1 and session 2, like being treated like a consultant compared to a fractional, which is like integrated part of the team, fully aligned. And I think to get that alignment right, we spoke about onboarding and what it feels like, but I actually think coming further back up the journey of like when you meet a prospect, it all starts there. Like it's the narration of the value that you drive, we have to get really good at.
Welcome to Infraction, the podcast where we unpack everything that we're learning from building the go-to resource for all things fractional.
Every week, we're sharing insights that we're learning from our community of fractional leaders, as well as the highs, the lows, and all of the lessons of building a business from the ground up. By the way, I'm Adam.
And I'm Sam. Now let's get into today's show.
Sam, how are you?
I'm good. Better now. Yeah. Better now. I was flagging earlier, but yeah, all good, mate. How about you?
Good. Bit away from home this week. Looking forward to the weekend. Long weekend here in the UK. Looking forward to that.
What are the plans? Nothing
meaningful, which is perfect. Reggie's got a birthday due on Sunday at Ninja Warrior.
Oof,
so
exciting.
like me and Riley are like, can we tag along? Just do like Ninja Warrior course. That'd be good fun. I was going to take him go-karting tomorrow, but look outside.
Not looking great.
Bloody miserable. But energies, I'm struggling with energy a little bit right now. I think you're right. Before we hit record, you were like, I think energies are swapped because about an hour ago you were a sourpuss.
Yeah.
You really were.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm going to be a sourpuss for this pod.
Feels like it.
But I feel like I'm on a slight come down right now.
Okay.
In a positive sense, though, I think it's just like the week has just been like full on. Been away from home, which I'm not used to being away from home that much anymore. So I've been on the road for like 3 nights this week. So away from the family.
Been on the road.
Been on the road,
been
mate.
Gigging.
Been on the road. Yeah, makes it sound way better, doesn't it? I've been on the road. It's been away from home in hotels, but full on days as well.
Cool.
How about you?
It's always full on.
What's
days,
your week been?
My week has been similar, to be honest. Less road moving around, but from an energy perspective, been challenging, I'd say, for sure. Started off the week strong, but then in the middle had a bit of a slump. So ending the week strong though, all good. Podcast. Nice. It was awesome. On Wednesday night, we did the second Infraction community session. Third, but technically like the second proper one. That was good, energizing. A lot of good stuff came out the back of that. We launched the newsletter this week as well, so that was good. On Monday. And yeah, it's just been really good. I felt very positive this week about the content machine starting to turn. So yeah, that's been good. That's been energizing.
How about we unpack both of those things then? So there's kind of like the Infraction session 2, we'll call it, which was all around how do we identify our ICPs. So in a non-wanky way of saying that, like ideal customer profile. So like actually like who are the people that we want to try and attract as a fractional leader? So we unpack that. And then how about we go into some of the content stuff that we're doing, as well as I guess some of the wider considerations that we're trying to navigate from a community perspective. One of the members of the community put their hand up and was like, hey, if you needed some extra support.
Two.
Yeah. Who's the second?
Kev and Anita.
Oh, of course, yeah. Because I'm so close to Kev, like I work with him anyway. Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. And maybe we can just share some of that stuff as well. Where do you want to start with the first session? Because I think the goal of the pod is for people that aren't in these cohorts and these sessions, maybe we can try and share some of the learnings, or at least some of the stuff that we're talking about, to try and bring that as like a conversation starter for, I guess, all fractionals. So where do you want to start?
Well, I think it probably makes sense to start with the conversation that we had around ideal client profile. For me, I found it interesting because I was kind of, I've been fractional in, I suppose, different capacities for a while. And it's not something that I've focused on a lot, if that makes sense, in the past. So I was curious going into the conversation to hear other people's takes on it, and how they approach it, really. And it was really enlightening, because what we're essentially doing is categorizing the types of people that we want to work with so that we can qualify them before we do start working with them?
I actually kind of think it doesn't even come down to that's important, but it's actually before the qualification stage, in my view, which is if we don't define who we're a fit for or who we want to work with, we don't know the sort of content, narrative, copy on website, the sort of people we're trying to attract. If, in my view, and there were some counter views in the discussion, which I think is wonderful. It's if we try and be like everything to everyone in like wearing a, let's just call it a CMO hat as an example, you end up being no one to everybody because it's actually that you don't stand for anything. And if you don't stand for anything, you kind of just get lost in like the sea of sameness of like the title CMO. And there was a couple of things that I think were interesting from the conversation. One, like how important is it to keep a very broad ICP compared to going like hyper specialized, and there's pros and cons of both. And then actually is thinking about an ICP around, I guess, specific attributes of like size of company. There's another lens to look at it through. Is like we can have an ideal customer profile around the solutions that we drive compared to the type of companies we want to work with.
Well, that was actually part of the notes that I made. I've got the notes up here in regards to the different. In my head, I'm just thinking categories. It's all categories. It's like you're trying to put people in categories so that we know how to tackle the customer journey, whether it's before qualification, before we work with them, and it goes before that into marketing and all that kind of good stuff. I think the interesting thing is that a lot of fractional executives and leaders tend to get a lot of their work through referral. So maybe they're not so focused on that really front end of the funnel, websites, content, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know some of them are, because I see some of the guys in the group like Janika and Harriet, etc., on LinkedIn, posting content and doing all that good stuff. So I know that some people do, but I think some people don't focus on that stuff. So I think where it plays in for those guys, the people that don't, is probably more at that qualification level. But it's obviously really important at both stages. I think that there are lots of different categories that you can try and define who your ideal client profile is by. And based on what you were saying and a couple of the other guys, I actually really like and this comes down to your solutions, selling solutions, and like that front end positioning. I find that to be very based on pain points that you're trying to solve, which lands really well from a marketing perspective, right? So if somebody is hitting content or is hitting your website or whatever it is, and you're saying, "Hey, I solved this problem for," and if you're struggling with X, Y, and Z, this is what I can do. So I think that lands really well there. But then you might get somebody through that part of the journey, and then you get into more specifics around like company formation, demographics, turnover, all that kind of good stuff. You could put that all into the front end as well. So there's no hard and fast rules here, obviously, in regards to what to do. But there's so many things that you can categorize people by. I found that quite interesting because I hadn't sort of put all of that together before, if that makes sense.
Do me a favor, take the position of someone that is trying to steelman the argument to say you shouldn't go narrow, you should stay wide. You shouldn't, I'm using quite loaded language, but you shouldn't pigeonhole yourself in a specific area and go hyper specialized. You should stay broad. Steelman that argument if you were a fractional.
Well, I think the classic argument against is you have broader reach. You can reach more people because you are not, narrowing yourself too down, right? You can keep your appeal wider. Your appeal can be broader because you're not going so narrow and so deep in one specific area. I think that's the sort of the classic argument. I don't feel like that really works in this day and age when there's so much noise on the internet. And again, this really comes down to like, each person's individual approach. But, if you are using the internet specifically to try and attract new clients, I feel like being broader is going to make it a harder job personally.
I think that's like one of the nuances. Let me just help's the wrong word. Let me build on that from a steelman perspective, which is if I operate in different industries and don't pigeonhole myself, it exposes me to lots of other types of industries, ways of working that my industry, air quotes, if I just stayed here, we might not even be thinking about. Just to bring that to life is like my old world was heavily in the construction space, but we were like 5-6 years behind the curve of, I guess, modern technologies and approaches to like generating awareness, traffic, desire,
When you say
action,
we, do you
sales.
mean the space?
The space,
Yeah.
like the industry was like, felt very archaic. And then all of a sudden you go and play in other spaces and you start to see, actually, why don't we bring some of that into our construction world? And then all of a sudden we're not like the best of a bad bunch, which is like, actually we do it this way, but we can do what everyone else does great, which is what might happen if you stay very siloed and you don't start to look a bit left and right into other verticals and industries. And you go, I can bring all the best stuff or stuff that I'm bumping into in other spaces into new work and new best practices and new efficiencies. That's, I guess, one of the arguments for not going hyper specialized. But you just said something around.
Well, can I just jump in there as
Yeah.
well? I remember in my early days of sort of working on my own, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts, still do, but used to listen to a lot of podcasts that were and soak up a lot of advice. And that was some of the constant advice, which was start broad and then sort of narrow down afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that works well if you are not already highly specialized. That can work well if you are not already highly specialized. So I'm going to pick on Janika, for example. She's a really good example if we bring to life with a member of the community. She's super specialized in, she's a CMO for CPG, right? She does CPG. That's a really broad category, but it is quite specialized, right?
Yeah, it's a narrow category in a massive sector. Yeah,
Right,
it's like CPG can cover a lot, but she goes, no, I'm like the best at, I'm a great CMO for long-standing relationships for CPG.
Yeah, and she takes that position because she's worked in CPG for countless amount of years, right?
But that also comes down to the point you were making earlier, which is like if you're having to create content to try and stand out, it's really hard if you stay broad. But, and I'm not specifically talking about Janika's case here, but it might be true because she's been in that industry and built her network up through that. Kind of the byproduct of that is the referrals that you'll get are naturally from the industry that you've been playing and being successful in. So like you end up, you may not be thinking of yourself as like a narrow specialist, but because you've done CPG work for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, naturally the network that you build is in that space and that's what they know you for. So referrals come from that space. And I think
a lot of sense.
Because of that,
it becomes almost like a referral echo chamber, right?
Yeah, in a positive sense though, because that's what you're great at.
Yeah.
But I think if you were a fractional now taking an approach to say, I'm actually trying to grow my practice and I want to try and acquire more leads at scale. And to do that, you're going to start creating content and taking that approach, whether it's podcasts, LinkedIn, outreach, events. I personally think it's extremely hard to stand out at all unless people can make, there's that whole thing of being referable, which is if someone can't say, you should speak to Sam for X, he's the guy that helps brands and companies go from X to Y. You kind of need to arm people with that understanding of what you do. Otherwise, it's really
simple for people to recommend, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That is a really good point. I think with all of these conversations, I think it's really interesting because there is no right or wrong answer. It is going to depend, like everybody will have their opinion and it's always based on their own personal experiences, but it can work both ways.
But I think there's also another lens, which I learned in the session, which is there's some roles that I think pattern recognition is always valuable. So when someone's hiring like a strategic leader, full-time, part-time, fractional, however you define it, if you're hiring someone for strategy, having someone that's been there and done it is kind of built into what you're expecting.
Right.
Like you're hiring someone who has got the scar tissue of having navigated that world before and has that pattern recognition of I've been there, seen it, done it, and I can fast track decisions because I kind of know this space.
Yeah.
So I think pattern recognition is really valuable. But I think one thing that I took away from the session was there are some functions and disciplines where it's less valuable in terms of maybe just to grab like one of the examples is from like a finance function. Yes, going in like an e-commerce fractional CFO is one thing, but going from the difference between like doing like athleisure and beauty, there's an argument to say like that's just too niche. Like finance for e-commerce is finance for e-commerce. So I think there's actually the lens of depending on the discipline that you do, depends on how zoomed in or zoomed out you need to be in order to like attract the right customers. I think there's like a
it seems like there's a function specific element to this as well.
function specific.
Because, for example, Ben in the group, he works with startups, and his position, which resonates a lot, was I work with startups and I understand the problems that everybody up until Series A or B, I can't remember how far he goes. I understand those problems that startups have in the tech space in San Francisco. So it's quite narrow. I mean, tech's quite a big sector as well, but if you're a startup in that space, he understands from a finance perspective what that is. And you could say that's going to be different to finance for a e-commerce, right?
I think one thing that we both seem to be like navigating around is you have to be able to say what you do in a sentence.
Yeah.
Because like Ben's example is like, he has the pattern recognition to help startups that have just raised Series A get financial clarity on their A, B, and C. Well, I'm not a CFO, I don't know the language, but it's like, I think what I took away was it actually doesn't matter whether you kind of go, I serve 25 to 50 million quid brands that operate in this space and vertical, or I help people solve this pain point. There are so many different ways to define like who your ideal client is.
Who you're right for.
But I think one thing that is true is you have to be able to communicate that in one or two sentences. And I would push everyone to think about that who is listening to this, which is even if you can't define like the exact persona, because that might not be the right approach, you have to be able to communicate the transformation that you take your clients on. And we had that slide, that Super Mario slide, which was great. Turns out Janika is also Super Mario Queen.
Super Mario Queen.
Save the princess and quit the game. She's like, done, move on. But that slide, and I completely forgot about it. And just to bring it to life for people that are listening, is there's a slide and it talks about, I can't remember the name of the thing, but it's like Super Mario plus, what's that?
There's
mushroom.
No, it's a Super Mario, and then you've got the flower. And the flower, when you're playing Super Mario, if you pick up the flower, you turn into a big Super Mario that can shoot fireballs.
Yeah. So the whole point of that slide, I was like, okay, I remember grabbing this a while back to try and explain to my old team what an ICP was and how we communicate. It's Super Mario is the client, okay? We are the flower. And often when we're speaking to a prospect, we go, hey, we're the flower. Here's all of our features. Here's what we're good at. But we forget to communicate the transformation we're going to take that client on. And that's like the big Super Mario that can be awesome. Nearly swore then. I think we're trying to keep this as a clean show. But can be awesome, shoot fireballs, and look how amazing you are. That's the thing we need to try and identify and like communicate. Like no one really cares about your features. They care about the transformation you're going to take them on. They don't care about you. They care about themselves. So you have to start communicating to your prospects that are a fit for you of like, hey, I take brands like X and deliver them to Y. I solve this pain point. We have to start narrating and storytelling the journey we take people on, because the people that resonate with it, and then we're going slightly further down the sales journey, but it's the world that I operate in, is strong conviction that if you start to communicate the transformation that you take people on and they believe that story that you're narrating, there is automatically increased value assigned to you compared to other people that look like generalists.
Yeah.
And that allows you to have a conversation around value compared to price. And I think that's where we all want to move to. Every fractional wants to be able to command. They don't want to just swap time for money, that they've built up experience. And it's actually, I want to be paid for my thinking, my knowledge, not just my time.
Yeah.
It's coming back to what you said in the last one, is like the accountability to actually delivering results. We want to capture some of that value. And we only do that if we position ourselves very early on in the customer journey. And I think the relationships that I've had in the past that haven't ended up fantastic in terms of like that tension It's when I've done a poor job communicating my value up front that it's become around like price at the end of the conversation. And they have always ended up in those those relationships where it's just feels like we're not considering each other like a partner. We're sitting on opposite sides of the table sometimes, and it
Trying
feels
to take from each other.
yeah, compared to like sitting on the same side of the table, aligned and going, okay, how do we fix this together?
Yeah.
And then arguably that's where you kind of sit more in the being treated like a consultant, just to loop back the session one and session two, like being treated like a consultant compared to a fractional, which is like integrated part of the team, fully aligned. And I think to get that alignment right, we spoke about onboarding and what it feels like, but I actually think coming further back up the journey of like when you meet a prospect, it all starts there. Like it's the narration of the value that you drive, we have to get really good at.
Well said.
Thanks, man.
Well said. Positioning 101. Let's go. Yeah, no, it was good. It was a really interesting session. So what else have we got here? I mean, tactics. We didn't get to spend too much time on that because the majority of the conversation was taken up with the positioning conversation.
Which I wasn't expecting, by the way. I was expecting us to kind of like all go, yep, alignment there, 15 minutes in, then 45 minutes on tactics. But there's some really good views around the table of like thinking about that ICP.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, one for another time, but like just the format of the actual sessions is something that is also we need to consider on how to improve it. It's great right now, but I feel like there are ways that we can improve, but we can cover that in another time. So let's talk about the tactics that did come up. I made a couple of notes on those. I think it was Adrian was talking about that he is a CFO. CFOs have certain qualifications and they sort of touch certain things, but they don't touch other things. And, and it depends what discipline you're in. And he was suggesting that one of the things that works really well for him is partnering with other colleagues in the industry that might do this part of the accounting, solving the accounting problem. I'll just label it that way.
Money stuff.
Yeah, this part of the money stuff, and they do the other part of the money stuff.
Said like a true designer.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I think some of the other guys said that they'd had some success with that as well. But for me, the one thing that stood out that a lot of people were saying is that they did a lot of training. And that might be like free training, and it usually in person by the sounds of things. So they're doing training in their local areas to help different institutions. So it might be university schools, it might just be business meetups and stuff that they're going to, and they're talking about their craft, and then they're building relationships that way. I think the thing with fractional work, and typically the level that a fractional executive lives at, which, like we talked about, is senior leadership team, highly strategic with some execution. It's a relationship game for the most part, right? So I think it's a really smart move to be looking in your local area and just seeing what you can do to build relationships in your city, in your town, wherever you are, and go about things that way.
I think there's two things on that, which is some of the people who are doing training for, there's like two reasons that I picked up. One, which was like brand building and thought leadership, where they are, I guess, paying it forward. They're supporting people that aren't anywhere near time going to become clients. They are maybe students very early on in their journey, but they're just paying it forward as an exercise to, again, probably just give value with no expectations of return. So we've got some amazing people in the community, but also sharpen their craft around communicating, working out what's their unique perspective of things, but also building brand. I'm now speaking at this university as an example. Or secondly, which is training to build relationships, build trust, build network for potential clients. I think there was those two things that came out of it from a training perspective.
That's right. And then there was the stair-step product approach, which you were talking about. Why don't you give people a rundown of that? Because that was really cool.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, part of the learning in the Growth Foundation in terms of what we do across a lot of the fractional work across each of our functions. When we're often trying to like open up a door with a client and I guess firstly understand the situation, because I think the hardest part of getting like fully aligned is getting permission and access to the business for you as a fractional to understand, is this a fit for me? Can I actually create value here?
Yeah, because you can't actually tell that very often from the outside. You
Correct.
kind of have to take that first step of integration to figure out, okay, well, what's behind these initial conversations? If I'm a CFO, if I actually crack open the spreadsheets and and see what's in there, like where
are
are
the
we
skeletons? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like even that word line integration, it feels like quite a commitment, quite loading. You normally like thinking about integration when you've already got like a statement of work signed and you're in flight with a client.
Yep.
So we took an approach of actually, how do we get to know each other? Which is, do we want to work with this client? Do they want to work with us? Do they respect our value? But also, like, what's the actual situation of this company? Because it's very different having conversations and then you kind of look under the hood, take the nuts and bolts off it and go, well, this isn't what I was expecting. And I think the worst thing to do as a fractional or any role actually, when a consultant or fractional, is going in and not going in with your eyes wide open and knowing the true situation, because it just creates this misalignment from day dot. So we kind of deconstruct what we do into, I guess, these stair-step products. So we go, actually, what's a accessible product that we can offer to clients that is irresistible as a price point, but it can't be free, because going from charging £0 to £1,000 or £5,000, whatever your price point is for that initial product, even going from £0 to £1, going from a free product to someone actually paying for something, there's a meaningful shift in terms of the attitude or the commitment, probably a better word for it. So we started to develop across each of the functions that we work with, and we work like across 7 or 8 different functions as fractionals. It's what's a introductory product that we can offer that allows the client to get value, allows us to understand the situation, and I guess internally the way we communicate is we want them to see how great we are. We want them to understand, actually, these are the sort of people that you'll be working alongside. Here's our strategic thinking. Here's our ways of working. So we've got, I guess, an example, we could do like a CRM audit. So before a CMO goes in, or a head of performance marketing goes in, or whatever the title is, we will go and say, actually, before we do any work together, let's just get an understanding of the situation. What you'll end up with is an output that says, cool, here's how we see the situation, here's the roadmap of what we recommend, and here's the do these things now. And through that process, we get to, again, understand what the client's like, work out the value, but we've also, from our side, captured a bit of value. And I think one thing that I think is really important to note is if you develop a product like that, where the objective behind the product is to understand the situation and build trust, you have to price it in a way where that's the objective. What you can't do, because it makes it really hard, is have like a really high ticket item as like the entry into your business, as like the gateway into working with you, because it makes it really hard for a new prospect to swallow that pill. It's actually, my view is you want to make it an irresistible offer that communicates your value, but also captures some value back that doesn't conflate the objective of capturing lots of yield on the first product, and is truly, you can express this there. And you can express this to a client, which is, hey, this isn't a core product for me where I try and actually generate any yield. This is basically a break-even exercise for us to get to know each other and for me to demonstrate the way that I work. If after that's done, you can see the value that I bring and I think this will be a great fit for me, then we can talk about me being a fractional in the business. I think that's like I don't want to say the right approach, that makes it sound there's wrong approaches, but I think that's quite an effective approach to understanding the situation.
I would agree. I've done that multiple times in the past and it's always worked really well. Essentially, it's a paid project to build the plan.
Paid project to build the plan. But I think because in the world of fractional work, we kind of think it in a binary sense, which is I'm either working with a client or I'm not.
Yeah.
But there can be that middle ground where it's like get paid. The summary is like get paid to find the situation out, but make it accessible enough that it doesn't become a big hard sales task just because your product, that is not your product. That is not your core product that you're trying to sell.
No, but it's something that you've got to do anyway.
Yeah.
You can't really enter a new fractional position without doing that piece of work.
Yep.
So chunk it off at the beginning, make it chargeable. Maybe it takes a week. It's like, hey, work on it with a week. It's going to cost £500, dollars, whatever. And, at the end of it, we'll have like a good understanding of the plan moving forward and how I can integrate properly to the team.
100%.
Yeah.
Before we move on, it's also that point in time where as you are immersed with that client on that project, your spidey senses will be tingling or should be tingling. You should be asking yourself all those questions, which is, cool, what's their level of access that they give me? How quickly do they respond to my emails? How unreasonable are they in terms of expecting replies and feedback? Do they WhatsApp me at 11:30 at night, as an example? It's just going to allow you to quickly go. It's like a first date. It's like, cool, before you get married, let's just go on a few dates. This is what that is in the world of fractional work.
Communication style is really important as well at that point in time, figuring out if that's going to work.
Yeah.
So,
and you just get a sense for like how much they respect your time and boundaries.
Yeah.
By the way, that only happens.
And actually, if they're treating you as a fractional, or if they start to treat you like a freelancer or consultant and say, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do this?" You will get like a good understanding of that.
I'm going to asterisk and caveat all of that, which is you have to set that project up for success by being clear up front. If they act unreasonable, but you haven't defined what reasonable communications are, they might think that they're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
So it's our responsibility to explain to a client, here's my ways of working. This is how I operate. I respond in these timeframes. If there's a P1 emergency, this is how you can contact me. Here's what I define as all of those rules of engagement. You have to nail up front. Otherwise, what you think is unreasonable, they might think is day-to-day business. So it's just making sure you manage that.
Cool.
Let's talk about Infraction. Let's talk about like what we've done. Wrap up with a little bit of an insight in terms of like where we are. You said content marketing engine's moving.
Yeah.
What have we done so far and what we're planning to do?
So podcast is moving, obviously, evidently, listening to this.
Even though if there are a few jarring edits of this, it's because we're trying to video this with this camera and it keeps saying temperature's too high. But we'll work it out.
We need to fix that.
Just bought a new camera for this as well. Unbelievable. Anyway, all the gear.
So yeah, I suppose the machine, just to open up the hood and share the goodies, if that's even the term.
There's a song. What's it? Mad Goodies. I'm not going to start singing it. But yeah.
Don't start singing. No. So what we do is we take all of the insights from the sessions and then roll them into content, right? So obviously, there's really good talking points for this podcast. And then we can cut this into short form video clips, share those on social. So we started that this week, though we haven't done as much as I think we needed to.
Did one, mate, and we got like 10.
Yeah, we need to ramp this up even more. But
that's what I was trying to call you about the other day, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So we need to ramp that up even more. That's on us. We need to do a better job of that next week.
I may as well just share on the mics. Actually, what I'm thinking is, do we just hire like a freelancer and we just put a bit of cash on the table and go, all right, let's just get someone to support us with this. Like just for that.
I'm down.
Let's just call it like LinkedIn strategy for like 90 days and just see the impact it makes.
Yeah.
Because you've been doing some amazing work of like, it looks like what you're doing is finding conversations around the word fractional and engaging in a really authentic way.
Yeah.
And I think that's great brand building. I think just being present in those conversations is important. But time, it's just like time is like challenging.
It's time,
to do this. So I was thinking maybe we hire a freelancer to support. I've also just got a couple of other like projects. I'm thinking like Kev and people like that have gone, they want help with their LinkedIn strategy as well. So maybe we could even like put a full-time head amongst an entity that we make up and just go, hey, help us with Infraction and help us with a couple of other things we've got in flight, but get some consistency and some responsibility into a role around it.
That makes some sense. I think there's still parts of it that I want to be very close to because I'm learning a lot. So that's good.
Coming back to setting up for success, it might not be now. It might be let's work out our rhythm and tone and how we engage and then build a playbook for someone to go, we just need you to do that.
Yeah. I think that we're heading in that direction 100% for sure. So having on LinkedIn, main goal right now for us, one of the main goals that we've got on this social mission is getting our LinkedIn page to 250 followers, because at that point we can actually publish our newsletter on LinkedIn as well, rather than just email. We've started our outreach program again to try and get more people interested in Infraction, get them onto the wait list for cohort number 2, which we need to start planning at some point soon. And what else is going on? Oh yeah, more content writing, long form content writing for the website. So there's loads going on, and we've had some amazing members of the community put their hand up and say, hey, I'll get involved. Like Anita, shout out to Anita. She's
Are you going to meet Anita?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Meet Anita. Yeah.
Meet Anita.
Yeah.
You're going to meet Anita on a future pod, because I think one thing that we're unbelievably proud and impressed with is like the quality of the candidates that like said, I want to be part of this first cohort.
Yeah.
They've come in and they've been amazing. And I even put like a Loom video into the chat afterwards. I was like, I learned something from these sessions every time. I get so much energy. And it was like a Wednesday, middle of the week away from home. And I was like, oh, cool. That's like one of the meetings, and respect to anyone who else I had a meeting with this week. But that was like one of the meetings this week that I was like super excited for, that gave me energy, came off it. It didn't let me down. So like bringing some of the voices and ideas of people of the community onto the mics, I'm looking forward to. Anita's going to be the first person. We spent some time together with Anita this week. Absolute rock star. She was like, can I help with anything? Because I kind of really love what Infraction stands for. So that's cool. And that kind of tees me up for some of the other things we're doing with members. So like Kev, who is a fractional SEO, we're going to not just do these like bi-weekly sessions where we unpack a specific topic like as a group. We're going to, I called it lunch and learn, but it's probably in the evening just to respect for everyone's calendars. But where there's like a drop-in session, which is like maybe Kev does like 30 minutes on SEO. Maybe I do 30 minutes on taking people from like prospect to customer and the touch points of a prospecting journey and how we close new business and bits like that. And it's going to be like quite a structured format for anyone in the world of fractional of like topics we think will add value to them, just as I guess another layer of content to try and help upscale, uplift, and
so much to do, so much going on. It's really cool. It's really exciting. It gives me a lot of energy.
What I find most exciting about it,
what?
It's not as if it's hard work to find the stuff to do. It's being pulled out of us. It's like actually like members of the community and stuff that we're seeing. It's like that will add value. That will add value. It's not like hard work. The work is enjoyable and takes time, but like finding the stuff that we want to do like gives me energy. But it's also not like, when you kind of like in some businesses, or so I've been involved in like businesses and projects where it's like, oh, what do we do next? What's the next tactic? Like none of that exists here. It's like there is a list of stuff we know we can do to add value, and it's just a case of getting to it. That's quite unique in my view. Yeah, which is pretty fun.
And the feedback that we've got so far has been amazing. So
I mean,
that's awesome.
What is it now? It's like 6:22 on a bank holiday weekend on a Friday for us, and we're here because it's like.
Because we love it.
Because we love it. And it's enjoyable. Apart from that camera, Sony, you're going to get an email from me.
Yeah.
I'll put a link.
I'll
put a link to this camera that won't be a link. It'll just be a don't buy this.
On that note, we should probably wrap up the pod before this camera bails on us again.
Okay. Any final calls to action? Call to action. Infraction.io.
Call to action. Infraction.io.
That's a great articulation to wrap this up, guys. If you've got,
we get a bit loopy here. You can tell it's Friday night now.
Friday night, yeah. We're gonna get one of those kombuchas down me. Guys, if you got this far in the pod, I'm gonna address the camera here in case you're watching on YouTube. If you got this far in the pod, first you do us a favor. If you are on YouTube, hit subscribe. Awesome. Not entirely sure why, but it just looks cool to get new subscribers. But most importantly, if you've got this far, there's probably something here that you're interested in. Head over to infraction.io, which will communicate a little bit more detail of like who we are, what we stand for, what we're trying to build. And if that resonates with you, there's a wait list to join a future cohort. And when you join the wait list, you'll be added to the newsletter, which is, I guess, the thoughts, insights, topics, and learnings that we're having on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Don't know how the frequency is of the newsletter. We'll go with bi-weekly or weekly.
It's weekly at the minute.
Yeah, cool. Just go and join that if this is of interest.
Absolutely.
Thank you to everyone that reached out to me off the back of the last pod, by the way, because I shared it on LinkedIn and had extreme positivity. Yeah. Thomas, thank you. You know Thomas.
I do.
You know Thomas.
I do. You shared the feedback.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Guys, thanks so much. Leave it there.
That's it. We're done.
Time to edit.